Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Michael Spur, and this is the Real Estate Forum. On this show, we're going to talk about accessory apartments. I have the Director of City Planning and Barney Heath with us, and Lily Canan Reynolds. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So, my understanding is in April of this year, the City of Newton changed the way it looks at accessory apartments or in-law apartments. What changed with that ordinance?
So yeah, we have a brand new accessory apartment ordinance. We put an ordinance change in specifically. Just to take a step back, this was part of the mayor's housing strategy. One of his premier recommendations was to get accessory apartments. I know you know this, but accessory apartments, the conversation in Newton has been going on for a long time about how to make it easier for people to get accessory apartments.
In fact, years ago when I did this show, I had Mayor Cohen on, and in a meeting before the show I said, gee, these are the topics I want to talk about, and accessory apartments was really a third rail for Newton politics, because I said, gee, can we talk about accessory apartments? And his response was, well, you can ask.
Yeah. So it's all over the country. People are dealing with this issue, particularly in Greater Boston as well. It's been an emphasis for certain communities to try and get accessory apartments because it's yet another way to deal with the housing crisis that we're having here in Massachusetts in general, and provide a lower cost option for people. And I think that's where Mayor Warren was coming from. He saw this as an opportunity to help existing Newton families provide maybe for one of their own to have a housing option in their own house. And it's a relatively low impact way to also produce housing in a way that's really not visibly impactful for the neighborhood, and yet really provides a needed service. So.
Absolutely. In fact, if you think about, when we think of in-law or accessory apartment, usually it's a studio or a one-bedroom. And just the simple laws of supply and demand, when these homes were built 70, 80 years ago, no one needed a studio or a one-bedroom. So simply the laws of supply and demand, there aren't that many.
That's
Today,
right.
Studios and one-bedrooms are one of the highest in demand, simply because there's a single professional or a graduate student or that couple looking for the one-bedroom with a little office. And there aren't that many.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that we looked at is exactly, these are, by nature, they're smaller units. In fact, the ordinance limits it to, I think, 1,000 square feet. So it is a small unit, and it is designed to accommodate a smaller household. So when we were looking at this, we were thinking about, for example, an elderly couple or an elderly individual that was looking either for a second means of income in a big house that they were in, or that they might occupy the accessory apartment unit themselves and rent out the bigger unit.
In fact, I've had a couple different clients talk about doing just that, being in a big Victorian, 9, 11 rooms. They don't need the space anymore. They could be in the one in particular was built, the house is into the side of a hill, and the basement level was walkout. She wanted to use that as her place because she didn't want to deal with the stairs, and rent the rest of the house out, which would have been great income.
Right, and we've talked a lot about in our housing strategy as finding ways for elderly folks in Newton to be able to stay in the community and to give them options. This isn't certainly the only option that we're pursuing, but it's one of the ones that we are pursuing. So I should have mentioned at the beginning too, it's the Zoning and Planning Committee of the City Council worked really hard at this. This was actually introduced back in October of 2016, so they worked really hard to get this right and had a number of public hearings and made changes to it. And they, as much as anybody, they were the architects for this as well. I think the mayor got it on the table, but they certainly worked with it to make it something that would pass.
And I have to applaud the city and planning department and whatnot for changing this ordinance, because it's something that I certainly see as a huge benefit for not only the homeowner, but also there's a serious need for it.
Yeah, what we're seeing is that it really provides another option among a range of different housing options in Newton. And we want to create as many options as possible, not only for diverse families, but also for different stages in life.
Sure.
And so this is a way that we're also able to do accessory apartments and to do them really in a safe manner.
Right.
So that's one of the other main achievements with this new ordinance is to have our inspectional services department making sure that all of these units are meeting fire and safety code.
Yes. Last thing we want is a tragedy
Certainly.
to occur.
Right.
Let's see. If the basic requirements, my understanding, for an accessory apartment, it's for a single family or two family, the owner has to occupy the unit or the home.
Correct.
Within a certain size, up to I think 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet.
Of course, it has to have 2 means of egress, and in the sleeping quarters, a window that's accessible to escape in case there's an emergency. Another thing inspectional services told me about was a firewall. What do you think out of those, basic requirements, what might be the hardest or the biggest hurdle that one might?
So we are certainly not the experts. The ISD folks that you spoke with are, so that's always a good place to start. And we've set up a process where someone can come in and just fill out an informational sheet about what they would like to do, and they will provide, ISD will provide information in return so they have a sense of what they're looking at.
Okay.
So, but my understanding is exactly what you just pointed out, is the second means of egress is often a really important point. Everything else can kind of be overcome, but that's a big one that has to be
Right.
met. So one of the things we tried to do with the accessory apartment ordinance is we know that there are a lot of accessory units that may not quote unquote be legal
Right.
in Newton, but are functioning as such. We're hoping that this is an opportunity for people to come in and legalize those units,
Right.
make them safe, and get them actually legal.
Sounds good. So, if some of my clients have a unit and they want to, contact the city and bring it up to code, it's not like, they're going to be arrested by the zoning police or anything like this.
No, we're not the gotcha folks, because
Yep.
we really want people to come in and legalize these units. So
I
yeah,
see.
we want to be able to informally give you advice on things, so that then you can go back with the information you need to make a decision.
Right. Let's see. Now, will this change if a single family has an accessory? Does this change the zoning? Does it become a two-family?
No.
Lily, you want to take that one?
No, it does not. So
Okay.
this ordinance change recognizes that these accessory units are accessory to the principal dwelling unit.
I see.
So they do not have the same rights as a
two-family.
a two-family or a single
Okay.
family. So it's actually
Yep.
just an accessory unit.
All right. So, I had a client that was hoping to sell their accessory unit as a condo,
Yeah.
but it probably can't happen.
No.
That was, those were some of the
Sorry.
things that talked about in zoning and planning, is that
Right.
they didn't want that kind of thing happening.
Right.
They wanted to make sure that the owner was present on site, either in the principal dwelling or the accessory unit. And I think that was an important consideration, because I think the thinking is that this doesn't operate like a two-family. It's much different because the owner has to be present.
Yes.
So that there's kind of a check on
Sure.
behavior, if you will, of the renter.
I think also that the way that this ordinance is set up is that it allows the unit to change over time. So as the homeowner changes from generation to generation,
Right.
that unit can become part of the house again and part of the main household.
Right.
Or it can be treated as an accessory unit fairly easily. So something that may be for a family member
Right.
as a extension of your home could
It's
for
not
an next
uncommon
family.
today. We
Yeah.
see young adults
Correct.
coming
Yeah.
back home. So,
And we heard some of those stories during the public hearing phase of accessory apartment when people spoke to this. We heard stories about people whose mother-in-laws wanted a place to go, they
Right,
had no place to
right.
go, whose son or daughter needed a place to go,
Right.
or in the case of some individuals where they were looking, they needed a second income if they could from this unit
Right.
to be able to stay in Newton.
Now, in my experience with accessory units, one of the big issues was in the past has been in and around the stove. That was how the city qualified it as multi-unit or one. Can an owner put in a stove?
Yeah, so we talked about this, and the thing that distinguishes an accessory apartment from just a extra bedroom is the kitchen,
Okay.
having a kitchen. So that makes it and a second means of egress and a separate entrance. So,
Correct.
but that essentially defines an accessory apartment. So yes, the kitchen installation of a kitchen again with ISDs.
Yep.
Okay, is the way you go about this.
Terrific. Tell us a little bit more about what the city's doing for outreach and education. I think it's a wonderful idea, but I think also there needs to be an investment on the homeowner. I think there's a misconception that, gee, I'm just going to rent a room out, or I'm not going to have to do much to this.
Yeah, so we're doing quite a bit leading up to this ordinance change. We also had a lot of different questions, a lot of public involvement through the public hearing process and other community engagement that we were involved in. So we do have a website set up that is newtonma.gov/accessory apartments altogether. And that's a great page for people to go to for resources. Other outreach that we've done is to create this brochure that outlines the steps that people can go through and the pre-application that Barney was talking about a minute ago. So this is sort of a guide that can be found on that webpage.
Okay, great.
But as Barney said, really the staff of City Hall of Inspectional Services really are there to help people understand what's required for their specific case for their home and help them walk through the process as easily as possible.
And they're on the second floor of City Hall?
Correct, yeah.
Should they speak to anybody in particular, or?
They can ask at the front at that desk and they'll be referred to the correct person.
And if I understand it correctly, it's just a simple one-page application.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the initial intake form just to get the basics down and
see.
provide information. So one thing I did want to mention as well, as part of the outreach, we have an information session coming up.
Sure.
Specifically geared to the topic of accessory apartments, where we're going to provide a brief presentation on what it is and have all the right people in the room to answer questions. And the details on that is it's coming up on July 13th.
Okay.
You have the time and the address.
Yeah,
Is it
so
July 13th?
So it's July 13th. It's in the evening at 7 p.m. And it will be held at the American Legion, Onantum, Post 440.
And it's going to have an open bar?
Yes, maybe following the event.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
So that's on California Street, 295 California Street, and everyone's
You would have
welcome.
a great crowd. The turnout would be.
Yes, but we want the focus to be on accessory apartments.
That's true. Okay.
Right.
Good
Yeah.
point. Okay.
Yep.
Point taken.
So this is really an open session. Again, no questions asked. If people come forward and they want to talk about their unit that they may have had
So
for a
they
while.
don't need to give their name. You're not going to be asking addresses or anything like this. It's just an informal.
Ex-
They can ask whatever they want.
Exactly, yep.
How do I do this?
Exactly.
What
yeah.
do I need to do?
We really are, focused on making sure that any units that are out there can be brought forward and are made safe. So that's our number one goal.
No,
in
absolutely.
addition to providing information for anyone else who may want to create a new unit.
Terrific. In my experience, for instance, a unit in Newton Center, it was a big old Victorian, and they had you had the main staircase, the grand staircase in the beginning, in the front of the house, and then servants' quarters were probably on the third floor, with the smaller staircase going down the back to the kitchen.
Okay.
They created an in-law or accessory apartment, created the second means of egress was with a wrought iron staircase that was external. It was a great unit. They did it right. It had great closet space. It was laundry in the unit. And I think the rent was approximately $1,800 a month. So if it's done right, it can be very profitable. I think it probably cost them maybe $40,000-ish to bring it up to code. But if you say that return is paid back over 2 years,
Right.
the rest is cream.
Right. And that's something that we've heard a lot from the Council on Aging as well here in Newton is they know that the people that they work with, the people that they hear from, they want to stay in Newton. And
Who doesn't? It's
right.
a great community.
Right.
Right. So they really are interested in finding ways to do exactly what you talked about, especially for people who want to do it sort of as an older adult, maybe as looking at retirement, and then they can invest that in their home and then reap the benefits over a long period of time.
Right. Typically, investors in real estate look for a 10% return. And this is like, a 30 to 50% return, depending on how much they put into it, with just a few years completely paid
Right.
back, and then, the income. So.
And we heard a lot during the public hearing piece, just the ability to have a family member that needs a place to live but wants to be independent. So, and being a father of a 23-year-old
Yes.
and a 22-year-old, I get that at some point.
Yep.
That if your kids don't have an option to live, you don't necessarily want them living in the same structure as you,
Right.
but having them nearby isn't a bad thing either.
Right.
And I think it works the same way with somebody who's older. If you're looking to take in mom or dad or one of your in-laws, if they can live next door but have a sense of independence, and
Absolutely.
and you do as well.
Yeah.
We heard that a lot time and time again during the public hearing process. People coming in and saying, I really want to have my mother or my whoever
wish-
move in, but I don't want to share.
Usually I
a
stay in
kitchen
touch with
them.
what's going on in the city, and especially things like this. And I wish I could have been part of that. I would have participated in a big way and brought my expertise and whatnot to that public forum.
Yes. Yeah. It was powerful.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
It sounds it. And many of these stories, and it seems like there were a lot of these stories. It doesn't surprise me at all because I see the need and I see the possibilities for it too. What do you think if there are any detriments, what might those be? For
Boy.
instance, parking.
Okay, so we really studied the issue of parking and whether or not parking needed to be, ultimately as part of the ordinance, we didn't require any additional parking because we didn't want to overburden the property by creating another space and creating more hard surfacing on the property and maintain the open space. Again, the addition of an accessory apartment maybe one car, maybe no cars, depending on where it's located.
Sure.
That usually can be accommodated either on the property or on the street or some other arrangement. We did a little bit of studying nationally as to what the demand was for parking. We found it generally to be pretty low, so that it wasn't something that ultimately was added in the
So
final ordinance.
you looked at this not only in Newton and Massachusetts, but you looked at the national.
Yes.
How other communities were
Yes, the zoning,
dealing with this.
Yeah, the Zoning and Planning Committee of the City Council, when they were deliberating on this and crafting the ordinance, they really tasked us with doing research nationally. And it was a great opportunity for us to draw upon experience from other communities.
What were some of the other communities?
So we looked locally at places like Lexington, I don't know where else, maybe Marshfield, I'm not sure.
Yep.
Somerville.
Somerville, we looked, then we looked nationally at some places in California. I know Portland, Oregon.
California?
Portland, Oregon we looked at because it had the most liberal accessory apartment ordinance. We figured that's a place to go to take a look at.
Okay.
since they had the most
Right.
liberal one, let's take a look
Now,
at that and see what the impact was, and we found that,
Define
again,
what you mean by liberal.
so
Just
things
really
like didn't,
open
didn't
ordinance.
exactly didn't require the owner to live on site.
Okay.
Was allowed for both detached. We
That
haven't
is
spoken about that.
Pretty liberal.
As opposed to internal apartments, so it applied, and these were all by right things.
Yep.
I forget what the size requirement was, but certainly in excess of what we had. So we
Have they
looked at
found a lot of problems? Did you, when you researched that, did they have a lot of problems?
the answer was no. I think
Wow.
in a lot of communities there was initially a lot of concern about how many would result from this ordinance and what kind of impact would have on the neighborhood. And again, in our research, we didn't find any of that actually to be the
Wow.
case. So most communities that have adopted this haven't seen the things that they were worried about happen.
That's
So-
fantastic.
And,
I mean, that's, it's
we,
surprising.
We tried to make that case as well here in Newton that
Yep.
let's see how it goes.
Yep.
We haven't had the ability to have accessory apartments by right. If something should happen, we can always go back and amend the ordinance to make it stricter if we
Right.
find out that there are problems associated with it.
What kind of pushback did you have from this? What objections came up in public comment and things like that?
I think that initially the parking issue was something that people were interested in learning more about and were
Right.
initially concerned about. I think that it really did help us to look at other communities. I think also it's a change. People always are interested in making sure that they understand what this means. I know
No
you
one
mentioned-
likes change.
Right. And I know you mentioned earlier the question about whether it was actually rezoning and making
Right.
it single family, two families. So people, wanted to get a handle on really what this means. And I think once we did our research and we really answered some of those questions, we were able to understand this as one option
and
for
convey
people.
people's concerns and fears about the worst case scenario.
Right, and I think as Barney was just mentioning, that it's not something that we have seen evidence of it being hugely changing communities or being
Right.
extremely widespread. It really is for a very specific,
Demographic or need.
demographic, a different, specific time of life. Not everybody is going to want to do this, but it
Right.
really is a great option and a very meaningful option for people who
Right.
who want to.
And a profitable one. I mean, it can,
Potentially, yes.
yes.
Yep. Yeah, we did hear arguments about density, people worried
Sure.
about how many folks were going to take advantage of this, and
Right.
would there be two families everywhere
Right.
that would become three families, or single families that would become
Yes.
two families. We also heard that students might be, this might present an opportunity
Right.
for students, which it might very well present an opportunity for students, which we don't necessarily think is a bad thing, particularly with the owner being next door. We tried to differentiate this kind of student housing from student housing where there's an absentee landlord. It's
Right.
a much different example if the
And,
owner's living next door.
Putting my broker hat on for a moment, an owner can discriminate legally and say no students, no undergraduate students. Student is not a protected class.
Right.
So, if that was a concern, again, it's obviously up to that individual owner. Their neighbors can't say, no, you can't do this. But in my experience, the BC crowd, they want to be in Brighton with their friends. It's really some of the BC law kids and the graduate students,
Right.
the medical students. Some of them have families.
Correct.
Sure, they want to be in Newton, but it's rare that you get, your quote unquote undergraduate, fraternity, sorority groups, ripping up, a street in Newton.
Yeah,
It just-
exactly.
it
Wanting
doesn't-
to live so far off campus that they're not part of something.
Right.
Or,
They're- I
and they're
mean-
limited in size. That's the other thing. You can get there's more than 3 unrelated. So,
4.
yeah.
I think it's 4.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there aren't going to be a lot of folks either. So,
Right.
but I think you're right. In the debate that we heard, oftentimes we heard from people that actually were graduate students that stayed in an accessory apartment in Newton. So it wasn't all that
Right.
uncommon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's, I'm connected to the BC community and the housing fair and whatnot, but it's rare that the undergraduates, I get a sporadic call here and there, but nothing that I'm marketing or I have is of interest to
Right.
them.
Sure.
It's either not accessible by the T or, you know, not what they're looking for.
Right.
And if they
Right.
do come in and I say, guys, you know, you're not going to be able to put the keg on the porch, okay?
Right.
It's just not going to happen here.
That's right.
So, what has been the response from the community? Have you had a lot of inquiry and about it, or?
So we've had about, since late April, when this was officially became the law, we've had about 14 inquiries at this
Really?
point. Yeah. So
That's actually more than I thought.
and we're trying to get the word out. But yeah, so we're starting to see some folks. The word is getting around about it. I think this
Good.
I think this outreach session that we're going to hold is going to help, because I think this is a word of mouth thing, where people
I'm sure.
that are a little nervous about this want to know more about it, what's involved, once they get a feel for it.
Right. And also, the idea of being a landlord that's not a no-brainer. You got to think about
Right.
it. All of a sudden, going from having your own home to sharing part of that, hearing somebody come and go,
Yep.
maybe, you know, hearing an alarm in the morning go
Sure.
off, or things like this. There'll be some changes that they'll have to get used to. Not only that, just landlord-tenant law they should look into, to make sure that they're not discriminating or doing something that they shouldn't and painting themselves into a corner. One thing I wanted to mention about the previous ordinance, or how before things changed.
Right.
If somebody had a unit that might not have been up to code, or, you know, was in the shadows, if a tenant found out about that and then had a disagreement with the owner, it could limit their way to enforce the lease. Because the tenant,
Certainly.
and I saw this happen where a tenant said, well, I'm breaking the lease. And I said, well, I'm going to keep your last month's rent. And they said, well, okay, fine, but I'm going to call inspectional services. And all of a sudden they're like, well, they call me, Mike, what do I do? Give them that rent. What do you, you know,
Right, your options are pretty limited at that point.
if you had everything up to code and it was permitted properly, then you could enforce your lease. Otherwise, it can leave you behind the 8 ball. So it's not only a safety and, you know, permitting process, but it's good for the owner not to be put in a lesser position.
Yeah, we really, as you say, we hope to bring people out of the shadows in this and
Right.
provide an opportunity to make the apartment legal. I think
Right.
that's the best outcome for everybody,
Yeah.
for the
No, no.
landlord and for the tenant, and that's frankly what we're after, because
Right.
our legal units don't help us in any way,
Right.
and we really want to provide a pathway for people
Do
to
you
make
think
them
that will
legal.
hurt someone's assessment with regard to, is going to increase their taxes or, you know?
Remember the answer to that when that did
Yeah.
come up?
Yeah,
So-
so we did have some questions about that, and our team went and talked with our assessors department and asked them for some data on the similar types of houses that had additions of similar sizes.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah.
And basically, if you're going to be adding onto your house or investing in improving your house,
Right.
then you'll see some effects of that.
Sure.
But it's not necessarily
For instance, if
different
you added a
for an
bathroom
accessory apartment.
or a room onto the house. but-
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, it's really the square footage
Correct.
that they look
Yeah.
at in terms of determining the
Right.
tax assessment. But
Right.
we're
I
not
see.
the assessors. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was our understanding in conversation with them, that it would have minimal impact
Yeah.
Okay.
on the taxes.
I think we're just about out of time.